What's up, my channel? It is your friendly neighborhood sassy blind writer here, coming at you with some new writing videos. Today, in honor of Preptober and NaNoWriMo, I am going to do the story writing tag. So, here we go. Before we get started, I would implore you to please hit that subscribe button so you can get more sassy blonde content from the sassy blonde writer. Current story. What is your current story idea that you're working on right now? My current story that I'm working on, well, okay. So I am working on a Frankenstein retelling that I originally started for Camp NaNoWriMo, and I didn't finish it, so here we go, we're trying again. I'm also working on developing a Jane Austen retelling, but right now that's just kind of a little germ of an idea. I haven't fully developed it just yet, but I'm super excited to start because a friend of mine and I are starting a podcast soon. It's all about Jane Austen, so I'm really excited to be talking about Jane Austen and while writing a retelling of hers. Spark of inspiration. Do your ideas begin with characters, plot, world building, or something else? My stories tend to start with a plot idea or a concept and develop from there. I apologize for the reflection in my glasses. I'm reading the questions off of my laptop as I write them. I'll put this over here. There we go. So my stories tend to start with kind of a plot idea or a concept. I've noticed I've been on a kick of writing just like high concept stuff where it's like blah 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 meets blah blah blah. So like one of my books is like urban fantasy meets Gilmore Girls, or Frankenstein meets high school, or something like that. I kind of start with just like a concept and then I kind of develop it from there. Usually the main idea that I usually end up having is either the inciting incident, the incident that changes everything, or the climax slash midpoint reversal where like it starts off one way and then it's the opposite by the end. Because like otherwise, I've noticed if I don't have at least the inciting incident or at least the climax of the story figured out, I kind of end up having to abandon the project. It totally stinks when you have to do that, but I've just noticed like I'd run out of gas. Like if I have the inciting incident figured out, I can at least keep going and like get to the end. But if I have the climax, I at least know where I'm heading to. I at least know where I'm going. So if I've noticed if I don't have one of those things, I end up running out of gas and having to abandon the idea. Brainstorm. How do you puzzle piece your story elements together? Do you start with the ending and make your way to the beginning, or vice versa? So each story I've written has been a little different. I've only written like 3 books in my whole life, 3 novels specifically, and one of them was like a reworking of the first novel that I ever wrote. So like I've written stories differently each time I've done it, which I recommend when you're first starting out because that's kind of how I got into my current groove that I'm in. But yeah, so each story I've written has been different. I wrote an urban fantasy where I started with the problem, I knew the ending, and then I just kind of spent the rest of the time trying to get there to the end. With my second book, it's my like Nancy Drew style book, which was super fun to write. I started with the inciting incident and the beginning and then kind of plotted everything out from there. So I usually start with at least the inciting incident and I kind of work the beginning up to that point, or I know what the ending is. So yeah, I will kind of start with the ending and then kind of plot my way backwards, or like, yeah. Or I know the beginning, I know the ending, and I just kind of figure out how to get there. Keep or toss. How do you know when you want to keep or dump a story idea? So like I was saying, I don't really like to throw out my ideas. I never really hit that delete button. My manuscript graveyard is a very large file on my computer. It's a very large folder on my computer, I should say. And I don't really like throwing anything out, even if I decide that I don't like the topic anymore, or I don't think it's a good story, or I'm not interested in writing it anymore. I'll always hold on to it because at least I can reincorporate something from that book into what I'm currently working on. Because I've noticed that my talents as a writer have shifted over the years, and that will always help me. Especially, I did a whole video on the blank on Blank Page Anxiety that I will link to down below, where I talk about going through my manuscript graveyard when I'm having trouble writing something and just kind of recycling some of my old stuff. So if I decide to toss an idea, or not so much toss as like put it to bed or just kind of give up on a project for a little bit, it'll usually be because I'm having trouble coming up with stuff for it. Story forward, especially because I'm a pantser. If I can't come up with ideas to move the story forward, it's not gonna happen, or if it happens, it's not gonna be good. Original idea. How much of your original idea for your story is actually used once everything is finished? So I'm also usually very faithful to my original idea. Sometimes it may change a little bit, but I try to keep the integrity of what I started, mostly because, I mean, that's why I started writing it, right? I mean, why would I change something that I enjoyed from the beginning? So I usually keep the integrity of the idea, but sometimes I change things as they go along. Hide or share. Do you share your book ideas with friends or keep them a secret? So I have like 1 or 2 friends that I probably share my ideas with, but overall I usually keep them a secret because I don't want to have to answer questions that people tend to have when they find out you're writing a book. I don't want to answer questions about an idea that isn't fully formed yet. Because I have a lot of really supportive friends and a lot of friends who really love books, which is great. But like, if I tell them I'm writing a story, that means they'll probably ask like, oh, when can I read it? And it's like, it's not ready yet, it's a pile of garbage. I don't like to show things before they're ready. I think that's because when I was younger, I did art, and I was always surrounded by people who were critiquing their art and be like, oh, this sucks. It's like, well, yeah, it sucks because you haven't finished it yet. And I'm also a musician, so like I'm a singer, and like, yeah, of course the German song that I'm learning sucks because I haven't learned the German words to it yet. So I don't like showing people things or telling people about things before it's ready. Also because I don't want to jinx myself. I think the closest I've ever come to telling people about my writing is when I've talked about submitting my poems or like short stories to contests, or for doing NaNoWriMo, but that's more just because they're like, oh, what's new? I'm like, oh, well, I did this, and they're like, oh, that's cool. And yeah, so it's usually just my little fun fact. It's not necessarily me giving them the in-depth of, and this is what my poem is about, the trauma of 5th grade. Dream. Have any of your book ideas originated with a dream or a nightmare? I usually don't have dreams, and if I do have dreams, I've noticed that they tend to become really mundane. Like, guys, growing up is really boring. Being an adult is really boring, and nobody talks about it enough. And the other day I had a dream that there was another cabinet in our bathroom that I could put the towels in, and I was really excited about it in the moment, and literally in the dream I'm moving towels from one cabinet to another. So my dreams are either really mundane like that, or they're just really out there, and not like a good story idea out there, but more like they're really strange. Like this one time I was trapped in my old high school for some reason, and it was like a video game, like a VR video game for some reason. I don't know why that detail was thrown in there. And I met up with one of my best friends, and it was right before her wedding, and she told me, because I went to high school with her fiance, well, now he's her husband, she told me, like, you have to get my husband, you have to get him out of there, because we have to go to the wedding. And I was just like, okay, no problem, you got it. And then I woke up. Like, what even was that dream? Like, I still don't understand it. I don't know how to analyze that. So the answer is no. Doppelganger. Have you ever had an idea for a story but then seen a similar premise in a book, TV show, or movie? So like, no idea is ever 100% original, or it's never something that literally no one has ever thought of before. And as somebody who likes to create and write and whatnot, as much as it hurts to kind of admit that, like, once you admit that, you learn to just kind of accept doppelgangers like this with a grain of salt. So, I mean, technically, yes, this has happened to me. I mean, urban fantasy is not exactly a new concept. In fact, I was kind of happy when it came about, when it became more popular, because that meant that, like, the idea for my book would be popular, or at least, like, people, like, there was an interest in it. So I'm always, like, I'm like always weirdly happy about it because I'm just like, oh, cool, like other people might like this. This is awesome. So like, yes, this has happened to me, but like, again, even if the premise is the same, just because the premise is the same or like it's a similar idea doesn't mean that they're going to execute it the same way I do. So a lot of times I just shrug it off, or I'm just like, oh, cool, the end. Big screen inspiration. Have any of your favorite movies / TV shows sparked ideas for scenes in your books? Definitely. So that's one of the things that I like to do if I have trouble writing a scene is I like sometimes I look through books that I've read that had similar types of scenes on my pretty little bookshelf right here. And sometimes I will watch shows. I know it is like, if you can see, I have the box set of the original Avatar: The Last Airbender series. That's one of those, that's kind of one of my creative go-tos because there's just so much nuance in that story, and I rewatched it as an adult and it's still really good. But anyway, so one of the things that I'll do if I'm having trouble writing a scene, usually with fight scenes, this will help me, or if I just have like general writer's block, I'll watch something that's in a similar vein. Like it could be one of the like doppelgangers of my project, like we were talking about with the last question, and I will try to watch that. And then if I'm having trouble writing a fight scene, I'll watch a fight scene. Sometimes I'll watch a clip on YouTube, or sometimes I'll just like rewatch one of my favorite movies or something, and I'll just pay attention to what's happening. And then for writing my scene, I'll basically go back and try to just describe what I saw. She cartwheeled over the attacker and then punched him in the face, like that sort of thing. It's not always the best writing, my best writing, but it's there and I can at least edit it later. So that's something that I'll usually do. I also like to do video games as well. I think video games are kind of are very underappreciated. They are a form of art. So yeah, I really enjoy playing video games because they're kind of an exploration of themes. So like if I was writing a dystopian novel, my go-to would be Beholder, because I just like how video games, you are able to explore different themes, and there's more than one way to play out a specific situation. There's always multiple pathways, or there's usually multiple pathways. If I like when your new choices dictate the plot. So yes, I do. I do movies, TV shows, books, video games, pretty much everything. I always find a source of inspiration anywhere. Nostalgia. What is the oldest and first story idea you remember coming up with / writing down? So I mean, I've always been like a storyteller, and I think I said this in my newbie tag. But when I was in 6th or 5th grade, this is like my first like novel idea, where I wanted to write a story about a magic dog that like cured a girl's cancer. Needless to say, I have not written this story. I have not worked on it in forever. I think the chapters were all like a page long because like I was in 6th grade. Yeah, I think I called it the Miracle Dog, so that's probably it's like the earliest story that I remember trying to write. I'm not going to do any official tags because I think it's Preptober / NaNoWriMo season, so I think everybody should be welcome to do this tag, and I hope if you do it, you tag me back. Alright, that's all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and of course, happy writing!